Hey everybody, it's Atheist for the Cause here with a ridiculous article for you. Men stab, rape, and kill women because they can. It's time to say they can't. You know, this is with The Guardian. Obviously, they do a lot of bullshit. But how does something like this get through the editors? The only way it does is if the editors are pushing this narrative. The Guardian itself has to be pushing this narrative to let this through. And this is really ridiculous. Says here, 63 women have died violently already this year, an overwhelming problem that should have Australian blokes reeling. Yeah, let's, just ignore all the men. It's unbelievable. Let's ignore, all the inconvenient facts that men are the victims of violent crime far more often than women. But that doesn't matter, because they're only men. Who cares about men? I fear for my daughters, and I feel onerous responsibility for my son. Well, then maybe you're not a very good father. 63 women killed by violence in this country this year. It's still only September. Men who hate women so much they kill them with axes, burn them, stab them, beat them to death. They kill their children too, or otherwise ruin their lives. My God, men are just terrible people, huh? I want to know the story of each, and I try to find out. I don't mean the story in a prurient, that's a terrible, shocking, disturbing story sense. I mean the set of circumstances that gives rise to Australian men doing such things. And in the end, despite the myriad personalities and the domestic circumstances involved, the family court orders and anything else, yet let's just ignore all these inconvenient reasons that don't fit our narrative. Because conveniently, it crystallizes down to one thing that does fit our narrative. Entrenched gender imbalance. Are you fucking kidding me? So men who kill women with axes, burn them, stab them, and beat them to do it, do it because of an entrenched gender imbalance. Men assault, rape, and kill women and their children because they think they have a right to. And that is a terrifying, overwhelming problem that should exercise all of us, but none more so than the Australian blokes. Notice how there's no statistics given here where because they don't want to show that men are actually the ones who are mainly victimized here. And that doesn't mean that the female victims don't matter, but when you're making an argument that it's an entrenched gender imbalance, then suddenly it starts making sense to compare men and women and how often they're victimized. So, and it's not that they think they have a right, like men who kill women or women who kill men or women who kill women or men who kill men. They're not doing it because they think they have a right to. There are many other reasons, but that is certainly not one of them. And so it says men who murder women, they know either don't care or they think they'll get away with it. And and why wouldn't they? Well, maybe because all of the laws in our society prevent this type of shit. Society fails women and children over and over. The courts bail and grant custodial access to, give the benefit of far too many doubts to. The most evil misogynists, men covered with danger flags, so that they can inflict violence on the same women or others. Women and children at risk aren't protected. This is so far off from reality that when men face discrimination in the family courts, they don't get the benefit of the doubt. This sounds personal to me, like, I don't know, maybe his wife or something had an issue with an ex-husband, or who knows, but this sounds like it's personal, because this, even to the common person, like, that's not even interested in this kind of shit, would realize that this has no bearing on reality. So someone will always listen to the perpetrator's justification. Argue mitigation if instructed. A judge will always consider the arguments, such as they are. What's so bad about considering arguments? And then making determinations? The media, meanwhile, dwells on the victimhood of the dead women, asks again and again what more they could have done to protect themselves from murder. No, the media overwhelmingly is concentrated on the perpetrator and getting justice for the perpetrator, and is quite pleasant to the victim. As a man watching all of this happen, I feel I have one choice: to look inside myself and at all the men I know and love and ask, are they capable of this? All men, by the way. We have to look, so, hashtag not all men, no, hashtag all men, apparently. So, and the question is, yes, all men are capable of murder and assault and things like that. All women are capable of murder and assault, because all people are capable of murder and assault. The problem comes in when you think that people aren't capable of murder and assault and other crimes. It's but the fact is that most people won't, including men, will never commit these kinds of crimes. The overwhelming majority won't. In fact, crime has gone down basically every decade for many, many decades. I don't know the exact. I think it's from like crime has been reduced like every decade from the 60s and maybe earlier. It's a reasonable question. Australian men who look and sound like all of us, regardless of color and economic circumstance. When did race become a part of this? So now we have race on top of gender, and we have class. Kill the women and children closest to them. My answer? No, I don't think so. But I will. Let me reread that. It says, it's a reasonable question. Australian men who look and sound like all of us, regardless of color and economic circumstance, kill the women and children close to them. Okay, at least he's saying that most don't. But I still want to scream with frustration, sorrow, sympathy, and anger for the dead and injured that I live in a place where attitudes towards genders are so perversely skewed that 1 in 5 young people believe women are partly responsible for rape. Okay, so this is just a lashing out that feminism is losing. 1 in 6 think no might mean yes. Many think stalking a female partner is okay, and that drunkenness can mitigate the circumstances of forced sex and assault. So if you click this link, you get this, and it's a lot of bullshit statistics, basically, where they. So there's a 1,000. It's a representative survey of 1,923 people aged between 16 and 24. And they're actually taking that from a survey of 17,500 Australians. Like, what the fuck? And some of these are, like, seriously running with the facts. So, although 84% agreed tracking a partner by electronic means without her consent was serious, 46% said it was acceptable to some degree. 1 in 5 young people agreed that men should take control in relationships. So they're like trying to paint this as like abuse and stalking. And 20% of those surveyed said women often said no to sexual activity when they meant yes. And 18% agreed if a woman was raped while affected by alcohol or drugs, she was partly responsible. Okay, well, who got drunk? The woman. Okay, so she chose to get drunk. So is she responsible for getting drunk? Yes. And did getting drunk lead to an increased vulnerability? Yes, it did. So it makes sense that some people would say that that is responsibility. Part responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean she should be raped or that, she brought it on herself or anything like that. It means that she has the power to change her actions in the future, and other women have the power to change their actions to reduce the potential to be raped, because we can't control rapists. We can control ourselves. So, if someone wants to rape me, I can, or if someone, sees an opportunity to rape me, I can't make them not. I have to change, or not want to do that, I should say. I can't change their mindset on that. I can only change myself and not have myself be, vulnerable and drunk around these types of people. So, and by the way, it's kind of interesting because you have to go down to the bottom to get like the actual broad statistics. And this whole survey is just bullshit. A man is less responsible for rape if drunk or affected by drugs at the time. So basically they're saying if a man is drunk, that should be a mitigating factor. And that only went up 1%, by the way. So while 95% of the 17,500 Australians surveyed by Vic Health believe violence against women is a serious issue, so what the fuck are we complaining about? This right here. Notice I have to click like 3 links to get to this. But in the end, 95% of Australians actually believe violence against women is a serious issue. 1/5 believe there are circumstances where women should bear some responsibility for that violence. Yeah, like when they, do actions that they could have curbed that were irresponsible. So that just shows you, it basically conflicts with everything he's been arguing up to this point, that men think they can rape women and that they have the right to rape women. No, 95% of Australians don't think like that. So, this is how these articles work, Write a bullshit article, find your bullshit studies, and then stick them in here. And not only that, but take your bullshit studies and, run with them even further. Just round off here, round off there. But I do think one of the many things that must now happen beyond federal, state, and territory government spending whatever it takes to protect women and children is this. Okay, so get this. So we have to, or not we, Australians have to spend money to protect women and children, whatever it costs, which you're always going to have some violence against women and children no matter how much you spend. So basically you're going to have to collapse the country economically. But no need to spend that money to protect men. Nope. Fuck them. Men have to call each other out on their behavior. Name casual misogyny where they experience it. Older men must mentor the younger about the dangerous wrongs of the pervasive gender inequality to Australian society and what they can do to ameliorate it. I don't even know what that word is. And society's male role models, cultural, sporting, commercial, educational, and yes, political, have a duty to not only lead by example, but to stamp on hatred of women and violence against them in their respective orbits. So if this paragraph doesn't expose this as ideologically driven, I don't know what will. Because if you look at it, he's taking his perceived violence against women, and now he's saying that, like, basically all men have to fight again, for women in all aspects of society. It's like, what does violence against women have to do with, like, education or, sporting rights? Yeah. Okay, there's violence against women, so, I'm gonna fight for equal pay in women's soccer. I get, what the fuck? Easier said than done, perhaps. For where does a bit of buffo on the footy ground, and he uses all these fancy words. Like, I don't know some of these words, I'll admit, but it doesn't, like, make him right. It doesn't. It's unnecessary to use some of what he's using, but whatever. I can tell what he's intending by the words, by the context, but it's just kind of funny. I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing, or maybe I'm just an idiot, but on the footy ground, and after a Saturday night session in the rooms, and who cares if nobody ever asks the wags what they think, rather than just dwell on their gowns and figures? What harm's really done anyway? By a few sexist lyrics or a little desensitizing screen violence? And who cares if one of the country's highest profile shock jocks advocates trying the nation's first female prime minister in a chafe bag and drowning her on the man who'd replace her, stands next to sign calling for a female duck? Holy fuck, is he taking this and running with it? And he doesn't apply the same logic to men who face violence and threats of violence and rape and all that kind of stuff. Again, his stance is fuck men. And remember, I'm not just making that up. He claims it here. He's got a clear double standard for his daughter and his son. I feel terrible for his son. And I feel an onerous responsibility for my son. Oh, he's going to bring it up here again. Says, I fear more than ever for the women and the girls I know, even though they're living at a time that's actually safer than ever before. For my older adult, and they're living, as a sex, they're far more safe than men are. But, don't fear for the men, you fucking misandrous piece of shit. For my older adult daughter, who must negotiate a society and an urban landscape where there are evidently so many men who would randomly, indiscriminately harm her just because she is a woman. That makes no fucking sense, and your own fucking study says 95% think violence against women is a serious issue, meaning they don't accept violence against women. And much of the other 5% probably thinks that it's not a serious issue because it doesn't happen as much as you claim it does. So it says, for my little girl who has all this ahead of her, unless men take control and make sure things change. Oh, okay. So for your little girl to make it, she's got to depend on men. Because she's a poor little victim that can't stand up for herself. This is disgusting. You are a terrible piece of shit father. Holy shit. And I feel an onerous responsibility for my son, as all men with boys now must. No. This is abuse. Or this will lead to abuse, I should say. Because it's like original sin. You're born a son. You're born a male, so therefore there are all these problems with you. What a piece of fucking shit. And The Guardian supports this. Somewhere in the next week or so in Australia, chances are that a man will murder a woman he knows well, and possibly his and her children. And, we'll just ignore the fact that men will be murdered, more men will be murdered in that rate, and women will possibly kill or harm her children in that time as well. What should we men tell our sons when they ask us why? No, you're not responsible for what other men do. Do we say the men were tied up in messy custody disputes? Well, if a man discriminated or was discriminated against, and he lost his children, and that caused him to, become temporarily insane, effectively, and harm other people, it's a good analysis of what happened, and it doesn't make it okay, but it shows that if we stop the discrimination against men in where men actually care about their children so much that they literally go insane from losing them, that if we treat men more fairly, then this will happen less often. But that's not to condone men and fathers who kill their children or wives or anything like that. And these are very complicated issues. A lot of times there are false accusations made and things like that. So that they were drunk, that they just snapped, well, I mean, should we just ignore these things? Is that what you want? Should we not be able to find the reasons why these events happen? No, we must tell them that our fellow men kill women because something about Australian society has conditioned them to think that they can. No, by your own links, your own sources, 95% don't think it's okay. They think it's a serious issue. What in the fuck? You're just making this up. And as overwhelmed and as frightened as that might make some men like me feel, we have to somehow call it out and do anything we can to change it. You are a lost soul, and you should not have children. Have a good one.